In our last video, we explored network scanning techniques, but this got me thinking, why not dive into something even more intriguing? So, in this video, we're diving deep into hacking wireless networks. It's going to be packed with valuable insights, so buckle up and get ready. By the end of this video, you'll be able to understand key wireless concepts, explain different wireless encryption algorithms, identify wireless threats, walk through the wireless hacking methodology, use a range of wireless hacking tools, and implement countermeasures to protect networks. Let's dive in and unlock the secrets of wireless security. All right, let's get started by breaking down what wireless networks are all about. Network technology is really pushing forward, especially with the evolution of wireless tech. Wireless networking has changed the way we work, play, and stay connected, giving us more flexibility and mobility than ever. By removing the need for cables, wireless networks let us access data on the go and in a much more portable way. Simply put, a wireless network is a system that uses radio waves to connect devices and share data, all without the need for physical connections. This allows for easy and flexible connections between devices using electromagnetic waves instead of cables. In a wireless network, data travels over these electromagnetic waves, which carry signals along the communication path. To get a clearer picture, let's look at a few basic terms. First, there's the Global System for Mobile Communications, or GSM. This is a universal system that allows mobile devices to transmit data worldwide, which is why our mobile networks can connect almost anywhere. Bandwidth is another important term. It describes how much data can be sent over a network in a certain amount of time, usually measured in bits per second. Then, we have something called an access point. An access point connects wireless devices to a network and acts like a bridge between your devices and either a wireless or wired network, like the Wi-Fi router you might have at home. Another related term is the Basic Service Set Identifier, or BSSID. This is basically the unique ID of an access point, which allows your device to stay connected to the network as you move around. We also have a frequency set known as the Industrial, Scientific, and Medical, or ISM, band. This set of frequencies is widely used across fields like industry and science, where specific wireless frequencies are needed. A hotspot, on the other hand, is just a public area where Wi-Fi is available, like in a coffee shop or library, allowing you to connect on the go. The term association refers to the process of connecting your device to an access point. You'll also see the term Service Set Identifier, or SSID, which is the name of the network you see when connecting to Wi-Fi. All devices on the same network must use the same SSID to stay connected. Now, let's talk about a couple of more advanced techniques used in wireless networking. Orthogonal frequency division multiplexing is a method of splitting a signal into multiple frequencies, which helps with faster data transmission. There's also MIMO OFDM, a more advanced technique used in 4G and 5G networks that improves data efficiency and reduces interference, making connections stronger and more reliable. There are also some spread spectrum techniques, like direct sequence spread spectrum, or DSSS, which protects signals from interference or jamming by mixing the original data with a pseudo-random code, making the signal more secure. Frequency hopping spread spectrum, or FHSS, is another technique that involves switching a signal between different frequencies in a random sequence known to both the sender and receiver, making unauthorized interception much harder. With these basic concepts in mind, we're now ready to dive deeper into the fascinating world of wireless networks and understand how these terms play a part in making wireless connectivity work. Let's break down the main types of wireless networks and how each one works. First up is extending a wired network. This is when a user takes an existing wired network and extends it wirelessly by adding access points between the wired network and wireless devices. An access point can connect wireless devices to the wired network, making it easier for devices with a wireless network card to access the resources of a wired LAN, like file servers and internet connections. There are two types of APs, Software Access Point, or SAP, and Hardware Access Point, or HAPS. Software APs run on a computer that has a wireless network card and connect that computer to the wired network. Hardware APs, on the other hand, support most wireless functions and provide the backbone for connecting wireless devices. Another common setup is a multiple access points network. In this type, multiple APs work together to cover a large area. If one access point can't cover the whole space, additional APs can be added, and their coverage areas overlap, enabling users to move around seamlessly. This is called roaming. Some manufacturers even make special extension points that act as relays, extending the reach of a single access point further by connecting multiple points together. Then there's the LAN-to-LAN wireless network. Here, each access point provides wireless connectivity to local computers, but those computers can also connect to computers on other networks. Hardware APs are built to connect with other APs, which means LANs can be linked wirelessly, though it does require more complex setup. Lastly, we have the 3G, 4G, and 5G hotspot. This type of wireless network allows a range of Wi-Fi-enabled devices like MP3 players, laptops, tablets, and cameras to access the internet using cellular data networks. It's a convenient option for accessing Wi-Fi in areas without a traditional wired or Wi-Fi network. These are the core types of wireless networks, each suited for different situations and needs. Okay, now let's break down the different wireless standards and what they bring to the table in simple terms. The IEEE 802.11 standard is the foundation for Wi-Fi networks and has evolved over time. When it first came out in 1997, it allowed wireless networks to run at speeds of just 1 to 2 megabits per second in the 2.4 gigahertz band. Over the years, it has improved significantly, adding more speed, better security, and features for handling multiple devices. New versions of 802.11 are often marked with letters, such as 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, and so on. 802.11a was the first major update, operating in the 5 GHz band with speeds up to 54 megabits per second, but it's more sensitive to obstacles like walls. 802.11b, introduced in 1999, operates in the 2.4 GHz band and offers speeds up to 11 megabits per second. It's slower than 802.11a, but became widely adopted. 802.11g combines the best of both previous versions by offering speeds up to 54 megabits per second in the 2.4 GHz band, while still being compatible with 802.11b devices. The 802.11n standard, or Wi-Fi 4, improved on earlier standards by using multiple antennas for faster speeds and better range. It works on both the 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz bands. 802.11ac, or Wi-Fi 5, operates at 5 GHz and offers much higher speeds, making it a great option for high-speed internet and gaming. 802.11ax, or Wi-Fi 6, is the latest version, supporting speeds up to 9.6 GB per second. It's great for crowded places like stadiums and airports because it handles multiple devices efficiently and reduces congestion. 802.11be, or Wi-Fi 7, still emerging, promises even faster speeds up to 30 gigabits per second and better performance for things like virtual reality and ultra-high-speed internet. Other standards, like 802.11d, help networks comply with international regulations, while 802.11e focuses on ensuring quality of service for applications like voice and video calls. There are also other wireless standards, such as 802.15 for personal area networks, like Bluetooth and Zigbee, and 802.16 or WiMAX for long-range broadband connections in cities. Each of these standards builds on the previous one, improving speed, reliability, and the ability to handle more devices. Let's talk about Service Set Identifier, or SSID. An SSID is a unique, case-sensitive name for a Wi-Fi network consisting of up to 32 alphanumeric characters. It's used to identify and locate a wireless local area network and is included in the packet headers sent over the network. The SSID acts as a shared identifier between the access point and devices connecting to the network, helping users find an access point to connect to. Security risks can arise if the default SSID is left unchanged, as it's easy for attackers to identify and exploit the default settings. When an access point receives a probe request, it may respond with the SSID if it's not hidden, which makes it even easier for unauthorized users to find. The Wi-Fi authentication process comes in two main modes, pre-shared key mode and centralized authentication mode. Pre-shared key or PSK mode, also known as WPA PSK or WPA2 PSK, is commonly used in home or small office networks. It's a simple method where a single shared password is used to authenticate all devices that want to connect to the network. The password is entered into both the router and the devices. While easy to set up, its security depends on the strength and secrecy of the password. Weaker passwords can make the network more vulnerable, which is why PSK mode is best for smaller networks with fewer users. Centralized authentication mode is used in larger, more secure networks. This method uses a radius server to manage authentication. Instead of a shared password, each user is assigned unique credentials, such as a username and password or digital certificate. These credentials are used to authenticate each user individually, offering stronger security than PSK mode. This approach is more difficult for unauthorized users to bypass. WPA2 Enterprise, also known as 802.1x, is the protocol used here, making it ideal for larger organizations like corporations, schools, or government offices where security is a priority. Let's now talk about different wireless encryption algorithms. Wireless encryption is crucial for protecting a network from attackers who may try to intercept sensitive information transmitted over the air. As wireless networks become more widely used, the risk of attacks increases. In this section, we'll cover various encryption standards. Let's start with Wi-Fi Protected Access, or WPA, is a security protocol built to improve Wi-Fi protection, addressing the weaknesses of the older WEP standard. Unlike WEP, which uses a static encryption key that can be vulnerable to attacks, WPA introduces a dynamic key approach through the Temporal Key Integrity Protocol, or TKIP. This protocol changes the encryption key for every packet sent, making it far harder for attackers to intercept or alter data. One of WPA's major security features is its authentication flexibility. For home and small office networks, WPA can use a pre-shared key mode, where users simply enter a shared password. For larger, more secure environments, WPA can operate in enterprise mode, using individual credentials managed by a central authentication server. This allows each user to have unique login information, adding an extra layer of security. When a device connects to a WPA-secured network, the access point and client perform a four-way handshake to create unique encryption keys. This handshake begins when the access point sends a random number, known as a nonce, to the client. The client replies with its own nonce, and they exchange additional information to generate a temporary key that keeps data secure. This key is refreshed for every packet, protecting the connection against intruders. Data encryption under WPA is designed to ensure both confidentiality and integrity. It combines each data packet with a message integrity check and divides the data into fragments. Each fragment is encrypted with a secure keystream, ensuring the original message cannot be easily deciphered. And their wired equivalent privacy, WEP, was one of the first attempts to secure wireless networks, aiming to offer protection similar to that of wired LANs. Built into the IEEE 802.11 standard, WEP encrypts data on the network's data link layer to prevent unauthorized access and protect against eavesdropping. WEP relies on the RC4 encryption algorithm to create a key stream, which is then combined with data using a shared secret key known to both the network access point and the user. WEP offers basic confidentiality, access control, and data integrity, but its design has significant flaws. It uses a static key that rarely changes, making it easier for attackers to exploit. Since WEP doesn't have a secure key distribution system, keys are often reused, allowing attackers to collect data and decipher the encryption key over time. Additionally, WEP's RC4-based key scheduling is vulnerable, making it possible for attackers to break WEP protection using widely available tools. And there is Wi-Fi Protected Access 2. WPA2 is a security protocol that came onto the scene in 2006 as a step up from WPA. It follows the 802.11i standard and uses AES encryption, a strong, widely trusted method to keep wireless networks secure. With WPA2, you're getting better data protection and network control, ensuring that only authorized users can access your Wi-Fi. WPA2 operates in two main modes. First, there's WPA2 Personal, which is the go-to for homes and small offices. In this mode, all you need is a password, known as a pre-shared key. This password generates a 256-bit encryption key that's shared by every device on the network, providing easy, effective protection. Plus, WPA2 Personal continually updates each device's unique encryption key, keeping your network secure. Then there's WPA2 Enterprise, a more advanced mode suited for larger networks. Instead of using a shared password, each user gets individual login credentials managed by a central server, often using Radius or EAP. This way, each user's access is secured individually and keys aren't shared, which keeps the network safer and more controlled. Here's how WPA2 works. It adds extra authentication data by using the MAC header, and then uses AES and CCMP encryption to secure each packet. To avoid replay attacks, it generates a unique number for each packet. The final encrypted frame includes both the encrypted data and a message integrity code, making it very hard for anyone to tamper with your network communications. Altogether, WPA2's advanced encryption and integrity checks make it a strong choice for wireless security, whether you're protecting a home network or a large enterprise. Lastly, we have Wi-Fi Protected Access 3. WPA3 was introduced in 2018 to enhance Wi-Fi security and address vulnerabilities in WPA2. WPA3 makes Wi-Fi security simpler and more resilient. It still relies on strong encryption, like AES, but adds new protections, such as protected management frames, to defend against eavesdropping and spoofing attacks. Outdated protocols are also phased out, reducing the chances of attacks. In WPA3 Personal, a significant change is the shift from using a pre-shared key to a more secure connection method called simultaneous authentication of equals, also known as the Dragonfly key exchange. This makes the network harder to break into by blocking offline password guessing attacks. It also means users can set simple, memorable passwords without making the network vulnerable. WPA3 Personal works just like PA2 for users, but is significantly harder for attackers to crack. For larger, more secure networks, WPA3 Enterprise goes a step further. It uses advanced cryptographic tools like GCMP 256 for authenticated encryption and HMAC SHA-384 for secure key handling, making it ideal for protecting sensitive information in businesses or government networks. Here are some of WPA3's standout features. The first is secured handshake. The Dragonfly handshake makes passwords immune to brute force and dictionary attacks, stopping attackers from cracking the network even if they know the password. Then it is Wi-Fi Easy Connect. This feature allows users to connect multiple devices using a single interface, like a QR code, so adding smart home devices is simple and secure. It is unauthenticated encryption. Opportunistic wireless encryption offers basic encryption on open networks, adding protection for public hotspots. Lastly, it is larger session keys. WPA3 Enterprise supports bigger 192-bit or higher encryption keys, giving networks a tougher barrier against attacks. With WPA3, Wi-Fi networks get a powerful boost in security, making it a great choice for anyone looking to keep their connections safe and resilient. In short, as each new protocol was introduced, security improved dramatically. WEP and WPA have become outdated and are no longer considered secure, while WPA2 and especially WPA3 meet the demands of modern network security. WPA3 is the best choice for Wi-Fi today, designed to handle the challenges of current wireless networks with much stronger defenses. Before diving deep into wireless attacks, it's crucial to understand how to choose the optimal Wi-Fi card for the job. When an attacker selects a Wi-Fi card, it's about picking one that supports the essential features for hacking tasks. For example, tools like Aircrack-NG work only with specific wireless chipsets, so choosing the right hardware is key. First off, attackers need to assess their Wi-Fi requirements. Are they only interested in listening to network traffic, or do they need to inject packets as well? For instance, Windows can listen to traffic but can't inject packets. On the other hand, Linux is capable of both listening and injecting. So based on these needs, attackers will decide on the operating system and hardware format, whether they want a USB or PCMCIA card, and which features, such as listening or injecting, they need. Then, it's time to consider the wireless card's capabilities. Most cards come from specific manufacturers, but it's not enough to just know the brand. The chipset used in the card is just as important, and unfortunately, manufacturers don't always advertise the chipsets. The attacker can verify its compatibility with the operating system and ensure it meets all necessary hacking requirements. Additionally, they'll want to confirm the drivers needed for that chipset and any required patches for the OS to make sure everything will work smoothly. So, when choosing the best Wi-Fi card, the attacker's goal is to make sure it's got the right chipset and all the necessary features for their hacking tools to work properly. To hack wireless networks, an attacker follows a methodology involving systematic steps to perform a successful attack on a target wireless network. The goal is to compromise the network and gain unauthorized access to its resources. The attacker starts with Wi-Fi discovery, looking for nearby networks and gathering information. Next, they analyze the wireless traffic, examining data and identifying weaknesses. Afterward, they launch various wireless attacks to exploit those vulnerabilities. This often leads to cracking Wi-Fi encryption, breaking through security layers. Finally, the attacker compromises the Wi-Fi network, gaining full access to the system. Now let's look at each step in detail. The first step is to find a Wi-Fi network or device. An attacker performs Wi-Fi discovery to locate a target wireless network using tools like SSID or Net Surveyor. This involves footprinting the wireless networks to identify the right target network in range to launch an attack. Footprinting is crucial in the attack process. There are two methods an attacker might use to detect the SSID of a wireless network. Passive footprinting method. This method involves sniffing the packets in the airwaves without interacting with any APs or wireless clients. By listening to the network traffic, the attacker can discover the APs, wireless devices, and SSIDs. There's no active interaction or data injection involved in passive footprinting. The second is active footprinting method. In this method, the attacker's wireless device sends a probe request with a specific SSID to the access point. If the SSID is unknown, the attacker may send a probe request with an empty SSID, prompting the access point to respond with its own SSID in the probe response packet. This method allows the attacker to identify the correct BSS to associate with. When an attacker is looking to target a Wi-Fi network, the first step is to find which networks are in range. To do this, attackers use various Wi-Fi chalking techniques like war walking, war chalking, war flying, and war driving to locate potential targets for their attack. With war walking, the attacker walks around with a Wi-Fi-enabled laptop that has a wireless discovery tool installed. This allows them to map out open wireless networks that are within range. In war chalking, attackers mark symbols on public spaces, often on sidewalks or in places where others might pass by. These symbols indicate the presence of open or unsecured Wi-Fi networks. War flying is a bit more advanced. Attackers use drones equipped with wireless scanning tools to detect open Wi-Fi networks from the air, providing a wider range for finding potential targets. War driving is similar to war walking, but instead of walking around, attackers drive around in a vehicle. They use a laptop with a Wi-Fi card and a wireless discovery tool to scan and map out open wireless networks while on the move. To carry out these techniques, attackers typically use a combination of a laptop with a Wi-Fi card, an external Wi-Fi antenna for better range, and network discovery software to scan and identify networks in their vicinity. Let's see some Wi-Fi discovery tools. Why not start with mobile-based Wi-Fi discovery tools? Let's start with Fing. Fing is a popular mobile app that helps users discover Wi-Fi networks in their vicinity. It allows you to quickly scan and analyze networks, showing details like IP addresses, devices connected to the network, and the network's overall health. Fing is available for both iOS and Android devices and is widely used by security professionals and hobbyists alike for discovering and mapping out networks. The app is particularly useful for identifying devices connected to your network, troubleshooting network issues, and finding open Wi-Fi networks in the area. It also provides security insights, making it a handy tool for detecting unauthorized devices or potential vulnerabilities. Then we have Wi-Fi Analyzer. Wi-Fi Analyzer is a Wi-Fi network optimization tool that helps you examine surrounding Wi-Fi networks, measure their signal strengths, and identify crowded channels. Attackers use Wi-Fi Analyzer to detect nearby access points, APs, graph the signal strengths of different channels, and estimate distances to APs. It's a powerful tool for scanning networks and analyzing how crowded the Wi-Fi environment is, helping to find the best channels to exploit or target. These two, Fing and Wi-Fi Analyzer, are among my top picks, but there are many other tools out there for Wi-Fi discovery. Now let's look at tools for our PC. Insider is a Wi-Fi optimization and troubleshooting tool that scans for wireless networks using the user's Wi-Fi adapter. This allows the user to visualize the signal strengths of networks and see which channels they are using. It also lists useful information about each network, making it a go-to tool for attackers to discover Wi-Fi access points and devices nearby. Some of its features include inspecting WLAN and surrounding networks to troubleshoot competing APs, tracking the strength of a received signal over time, and filtering APs. It highlights access points in areas with high Wi-Fi concentration, exports Wi-Fi and GPS data to a KML file that can be viewed in Google Earth, and shows overlapping Wi-Fi network channels. These capabilities make Insider a powerful tool for network discovery and analysis. Another tool is Sparrow Wi-Fi. Sparrow Wi-Fi is a comprehensive GUI-based tool designed for Wi-Fi spectral awareness, supporting both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz frequencies. This tool allows attackers to integrate various hardware like software-defined radios, HackRF, advanced Bluetooth tools, Ubertooth, traditional GPS via GPSD, and even drone rover GPS via Mavlink to discover Wi-Fi access points, identify SSIDs, perform source hunting, and conduct detailed spectrum analysis. Sparrow Wi-Fi also offers import-export capabilities for CSV and JSON formats, allowing users to easily store and share data. It can produce Google Maps to visually display the locations of the discovered devices, making it a versatile and powerful tool for Wi-Fi discovery and analysis. To find WPS-enabled access points, attackers commonly use the WASH command line utility. This tool helps them figure out if a wireless access point has WPS or Wi-Fi protected setup enabled and lets them check its status, like whether the access point is locked or not. Typically, WPS-enabled routers will lock after a certain number of failed login attempts, usually 5 or more, and require manual unlocking through the router's administrator interface. The WASH utility can also scan the 5 GHz channel, and it works in combination with the Reaver package, which is a tool designed for brute-forcing WPS pins. Attackers will use several commands within WASH to gather information. For example, they can specify which network interface to use to capture packets. They might also use a command to list all access points, even those with WPS disabled, or to scan a specific channel. If they want to capture data for analysis later, they can write the output to a file. Attackers also use it to send probes to access points to gather more details about the network, including its extended service set identifier and basic service set identifier. By running the simple command sudo wash-i interface, attackers can discover these details and use the information for further attacks or network manipulation. The next step in the wireless hacking methodology involves analyzing the traffic of the discovered wireless network. Before launching an attacker performs traffic analysis to understand the vulnerabilities and identify potential victims within the network. This analysis also helps the attacker figure out the best strategy for carrying out a successful attack. Wireless traffic is unique because Wi-Fi protocols operate at layer 2, and the data sent over the air isn't serialized, making it easy for attackers to sniff and analyze wireless packets. During this stage, attackers look for key information like the broadcasted SSID, the presence of multiple access points, APs, the potential to recover SSIDs, the authentication method in use, and the encryption algorithms protecting the WLAN. Sniffing itself is a form of eavesdropping, where the attacker intercepts all ongoing wireless communication. They achieve this by tuning a receiver to the frequency of the target's transmission and identifying the communication protocol used. Once the traffic is captured, attackers analyze the data for useful information that can aid them in launching further attacks. In order to sniff wireless traffic, the attacker needs to enable monitor mode on their Wi-Fi card. However, not all Wi-Fi cards support monitor mode, particularly on Windows systems. Once in monitor mode, the attacker can capture packets from the target network using specialized tools like Wireshark or others to begin the analysis. Wireshark is a network protocol sniffer and analyzer widely used for capturing and analyzing traffic on a target network. It can read live data from a variety of networks, including Ethernet, Token Ring, FDDI, PPP, SLIP, 802.11 wireless LANs, and even ATM connections, provided the ATM's OS allows it. For WLAN traffic analysis, Wireshark integrates NP-cap, which enhances its ability to capture and visualize wireless traffic, allowing for detailed drill downs and reporting. Attackers use Wireshark to capture a wide range of wireless traffic by enabling monitor mode. In this mode, Wireshark helps capture all kinds of frames, such as management, control, and data frames. Attackers can analyze ReadyTap header fields to gather critical information, including the protocols used, encryption methods, frame sizes, and MAC addresses, which are essential for further attacks. If you want to dive deeper into how Wireshark works, I have a video that explains it in detail, so feel free to check it out. Another powerful tool for network analysis is CommView for Wi-Fi. This tool is specifically designed for monitoring and analyzing wireless networks, supporting 802.11 networks. It captures packets and provides users with important information, including a list of access points, APs, and stations, signal strength, statistics per node and channel, and even protocol distribution charts. CommView also allows users to decrypt WPA-PSK encrypted packets with a user-defined key, giving them the ability to decode the packets down to the lowest layer. This network analyzer displays every detail of the captured packets in a tree-like structure, making it easy to explore protocol layers and packet headers for further analysis. Another tool is Aircrack-NG, which is available on GitHub. Aircrack-NG is an automated multi-use bash script designed for wireless network auditing and penetration testing. It is particularly useful for performing attacks on Wi-Fi networks, such as WPA-WPA2 handshake captures, WPS pin brute force attacks, deauthentication attacks, and fake access point creation. One of the standout features of Aircrack-NG is its ability to integrate multiple attack vectors in a single tool, making it versatile for testing network security. It uses Aircrack-NG for setting the Wi-Fi card into monitor mode, Aircrack-NG for WPA-WPA2 cracking, and Reaver for WPS pin brute forcing, among other utilities. The tool allows attackers to perform everything from simple packet sniffing to more advanced attacks like cracking WPA2 keys or exploiting WPS vulnerabilities, all with minimal configuration. Since it's hosted on GitHub, it is regularly updated by the community, making it a powerful and continuously evolving tool for anyone involved in wireless network security testing. You can find the Aircrack-NG repository on GitHub and follow the instructions there to set it up and use it. There are many tools available for analyzing the traffic of a discovered wireless network, like Kismet, but these should be enough to get you started. Each of these tools provides unique features for sniffing, capturing, and analyzing traffic, which are critical steps before launching attacks. As you become more familiar with the basics, you can explore additional tools to deepen your understanding and enhance your capabilities. After discovering, mapping, and analyzing the target wireless network, an attacker is now ready to launch various types of attacks. These could be fragmentation attacks, MAC spoofing, denial of service attacks, or even ARP poisoning attacks. Let's talk about some of the tools that attackers use to perform these kinds of attacks. One of the most popular tools in the wireless hacking community is Aircrack-NG. It's a comprehensive network software suite with several tools that can capture, analyze, and crack wireless network data. Aircrack-NG is known for its ability to break WEAP and WPA2 PSK encryption, which protects many wireless networks. It's compatible with both Linux and Windows, which makes it a go-to tool for many attackers. Within the Aircrack-NG suite, you'll find a range of utilities that help with different stages of a wireless attack. For example, Airbase-NG is used to capture WPA-PA2 handshakes and can even act as an ad hoc access point. If the attacker has captured the relevant data, air decapping can be used to decrypt WEP, WPA, and WPA2 packets. When an attacker wants to disrupt network traffic or force devices off the network, AirDrop-NG can be used for targeted deauthentication attacks. For gathering useful data like initialization vectors for WEP or WPA handshakes, AirPlay-NG comes in handy. This tool is often used to inject malicious traffic into the network to capture the data needed for cracking the encryption. Once attackers have the necessary data, they might use Airgraph-NG to visualize the relationship between clients and access points, making it easier to plan further actions. If they need to switch their Wi-Fi interface to monitor mode for packet sniffing, they can use Airmon-NG. To actually collect packets, they can rely on Aircrack-NG, which captures raw 802.11 frames, including WEP4s, which are essential for cracking WEP encryption. Attackers can also use Airlib-NG to store and manage lists of SSIDs and passwords used in WPA2 cracking. And if they want to monitor encrypted traffic while injecting arbitrary data, Aircrack-NG can create a virtual tunnel interface for that. With all these tools, an attacker can effectively launch attacks on wireless networks, whether for testing, exploitation, or penetration testing purposes. Now let's talk about detecting hidden SSIDs. Many organizations choose to hide their SSIDs as a form of security, believing that it will protect their network from attackers. This is based on the idea of security through obscurity. By making the SSID invisible, they think they are preventing unauthorized access. However, hiding an SSID does not actually add much security, as it can easily be uncovered by attackers using specific tools and techniques. One such tool is the Aircrack-NG suite, which when combined with MDK3 can reveal hidden SSIDs. The process for uncovering these hidden networks involves a few steps. First, an attacker would run airmon-ng in monitor mode. This is done using the command airmon-ng start wireless interface. This command switches the Wi-Fi card to monitor mode, allowing it to capture all packets, including those that don't include the SSID. If there are any processes that interfere with the Wi-Fi card's functionality, an attacker would use the command airmon-ng check kill to kill those processes and ensure the card works correctly. Next, the attacker would run aerodump-ng to discover nearby wireless networks and capture the packets sent by those networks. Now, let's dive into launching wireless attacks, starting with denial of service or DOS attacks. Wireless networks are especially vulnerable to DOS attacks because they operate in unlicensed frequency bands, and the MAC protocol used to manage how devices communicate is designed to be simple, which leaves it exposed to these types of attacks. When a DOS attack is carried out successfully, it can cause significant disruptions, particularly in WLANs that handle critical applications like VoIP, database access, or file sharing. Disrupting these services can lead to downtime and loss of productivity. One of the most common ways to launch a DOS attack on a wireless network is by using deauthenticate commands. These commands are broadcasted to the network, forcing connected clients to disconnect from the access point. This disrupts the connectivity between the access point and its clients, and essentially causes the victim's devices to continuously lose their connection. Two main types of wireless DOS attacks are disassociation attacks and deauthentication attacks. In a disassociation attack, the attacker sends packets to the access point and the client, which results in the victim device being disconnected from the network. The connectivity between the client and access point is severed, making it impossible for the client to continue accessing the network. On the other hand, in a deauthentication attack, the attacker floods the target client with forged deauthentication packets. These fake packets cause the client to disconnect from the access point. What's interesting about this type of attack is that it doesn't require the attacker to be connected to the network. They can send these forged packets to any device on the network, tricking it into thinking it's no longer authorized to stay connected to the access point. Both of these attacks are relatively easy to carry out with the right tools and can effectively disrupt a wireless network's operations. Now, let's dive into launching a man-in-the-middle attack in the context of wireless networks. A man-in-the-middle attack is a type of active attack where the attacker intercepts, monitors, and potentially alters data being exchanged between two devices. While this can happen over both wireless and wired networks, the nature of 802.11 WLANs makes wireless networks particularly susceptible. Man-in-the-middle attacks often start with eavesdropping, which in a wireless network is relatively straightforward since there's no physical medium that controls access to the data. Anyone within range of the wireless network can potentially capture radio waves, making it easy to pick up data frames. With the right tools, an attacker can capture, view, or store data being transmitted across the network for future analysis. Even layers of encryption like WEP are not entirely foolproof here, as tools to crack WEP encryption are widely available online. This is why additional security measures such as IPsec, SSH, or SSL are crucial to prevent attackers from accessing sensitive information. Without these extra layers, even protocols used to retrieve emails, like POP or IMAP, could be exploited, as they may send emails over the network without enough encryption, making them vulnerable. Another key aspect of a man-in-the-middle attack is manipulation. Going beyond eavesdropping, manipulation allows an attacker to intercept and alter data before it reaches its intended recipient. This might involve modifying encrypted data packets and retransmitting them, or even redirecting these packets to new destinations on the internet. Once intercepted, the attacker can forward manipulated packets back to the intended receiver, who may unknowingly accept them as legitimate. To carry out a man-in-the-middle attack, the attacker begins by sniffing the target's wireless parameters, which might include the MAC address, ESID, BSID, and channel number. With this information, the attacker can send a deauth request to the victim, spoofing the source address of the legitimate access point. This de-authenticates the victim, prompting their device to search for a valid access point connection. The attacker then sets up a rogue access point that replicates the original access point's MAC address and SSID, but operates on a different channel. When the victim's device reconnects, it unknowingly joins the attacker's access point instead of the legitimate one. From here, the attacker can act as the middleman between the victim and the real access point, intercepting all traffic passing between them. The attacker can view, manipulate, and relay data, often without the victim noticing anything unusual. By positioning themselves as an intermediary, the attacker gains access to all the data exchanged between the victim and the access point, turning this seemingly invisible attack into a powerful security breach. To perform a man-in-the-middle attack using the Aircrack-NG suite, an attacker can follow a series of steps that leverage its specialized tools to capture, de-authenticate, and intercept traffic. Here's a detailed breakdown of how an attacker might use Aircrack-NG to carry out a man-in-the-middle attack. The first step involves running the Aircrack-NG tool to switch the Wi-Fi adapter into monitor mode. This mode allows the attacker's wireless card to capture all packets in the area, even those not specifically addressed to the attacker. This is essential because the man-in-the-middle attack depends on observing and manipulating network traffic indiscriminately. After enabling monitor mode, the attacker's Wi-Fi card can operate more freely on the network. Next, the attacker uses AeroDump-NG to gather information about the available wireless networks. This step involves scanning for SSIDs, BSSIDs, or MAC addresses of the APs and associated clients. Using the following command, the attacker can display a list of nearby APs and their active connections. This output provides essential details, including the SSID, channel, and encryption method used, which help the attacker identify target APs and their associated devices. Once the attacker identifies a target device connected to the network, they can disrupt the connection by sending a de-authentication packet using Aircrack-NG. This packet, sent with a spoofed access point source address, forces the target device to disconnect from the network momentarily. When the target device tries to reconnect, it's vulnerable to associating with a rogue access point set up by the attacker. To send the deauth packet, the attacker might use a command like this. This command sends deauth packets to the client, disrupting its connection and prompting it to search for a new access point to join. After disconnecting the client, the attacker can use Aircrack-NG to perform a fake association with the target access point. By associating their wireless card with the access point, the attacker essentially inserts themselves between the access point and the target client, creating the man-in-the-middle scenario. This allows the attacker to capture, view, and potentially alter data transmitted between the target device and the access point. The command might look like this. The -1 option here tells Aircrack-NG to execute a fake authentication request to the access point, tricking it into thinking the attacker is a legitimate client. Through these steps, the attacker establishes a position between the client and the access point, allowing them to intercept and manipulate data as it passes through. This sequence, monitoring, scanning, disconnecting, and associating, is a foundational man-in-the-middle attack approach used to exploit vulnerabilities in Wi-Fi networks. Let's look into launching a MAC spoofing attack on a wireless network. In a wireless network, access points broadcast their presence and availability through beacon frames, which contain details like the access point identity and SSID. Attackers can exploit this setup by changing their own device's MAC address to mimic that of a legitimate access point. This is known as access point MAC spoofing, where an attacker effectively impersonates a trusted access point by adopting the same MAC address and often the same SSID as the target access point. Here's how it typically works. An attacker first identifies the MAC address of a legitimate access point, usually by monitoring network traffic or using scanning tools. After discovering the target MAC address, the attacker then configures their rogue access point with this MAC address and the same SSID. By sending out deauthentication packets, the attacker can force users to disconnect from the legitimate access point, prompting devices to automatically reconnect to the strongest signal with a matching MAC and SSID, often the attacker's rogue access point. Once connected, the attacker can intercept, modify, or redirect network traffic, allowing them to capture sensitive information or conduct further attacks. In some networks, administrators set up MAC filtering as a security measure to restrict access to known, trusted devices. However, attackers can bypass this restriction by changing their device's MAC address to one that is already allowed on the network. By altering the MAC address to match that of an authenticated device, the attacker can trick the network into thinking their device is a trusted one. Changing the MAC address is simple and can be done with tools like Technicium MAC Address Changer. Technicium's tool, which has a straightforward interface, lets users instantly spoof their network interface card's MAC address. Once spoofed, attackers can bypass network restrictions based on MAC filtering and gain access. MAC spoofing is an effective technique for impersonating devices or APs, and it underscores why MAC filtering alone isn't sufficient for network security. Now, let's dive into launching a wireless ARP poisoning attack. ARP, or Address Resolution Protocol, is how a device on a network finds out the MAC address of another device when it already knows the IP address. But here's the problem. ARP doesn't have any built-in verification to confirm if a response is actually coming from the right device. This lack of verification is exactly what ARP poisoning exploits. In an ARP poisoning attack, an attacker corrupts the ARP cache on devices in the network with incorrect MAC address information. By sending specially crafted ARP reply packets containing false MAC addresses, the attacker essentially tricks devices into associating the wrong MAC address with an IP address. As a result, devices in the network will start sending data to the attacker instead of the legitimate device. This attack can affect all devices in a subnet, especially since most access points act as MAC layer bridges, making all stations connected to that subnet vulnerable. If an access point connects directly to a switch or hub without a firewall or router to offer protection, every host on that network could fall victim to ARP poisoning. Okay, now let's see launching an ARP poisoning attack with Ettercap. Ettercap is a tool that's commonly used for RP poisoning, sniffing, and man-in-the-middle attacks. It helps attackers identify MAC addresses of clients and routers and gather information on network traffic. This method essentially lets the attacker intercept and potentially manipulate network traffic between devices in a way that can go undetected by the victim, making RP poisoning a powerful tool for attackers looking to capture credentials or other sensitive information. So, let's get into launching a rogue access point attack. Access points connect with client devices by broadcasting their network name or SSID and authenticating with them. But sometimes, a rogue AP can appear, a fake one set up by an attacker that tricks users into connecting to it. When someone connects, the attacker can monitor their network traffic, which might reveal sensitive data like usernames, passwords, or other information they're sending. An attacker typically starts by scanning the network to identify legitimate APs nearby. Using wireless sniffing tools, they can see details like the MAC addresses, vendor names, and even the security settings of real access points. Once they gather enough information, they set up their own rogue AP, making it look identical to one of the trusted APs on the target network. Then, they place this rogue AP close to the target area, like in a nearby room or even outside the building, so it's within range of users on the network. When a person's device detects available networks, it sees the rogue AP as one of the available options. The attacker's fake AP will send out a legitimate-looking SSID to trick users into thinking it's safe to connect. Once someone connects, all their network traffic flows through the rogue AP, giving the attacker visibility over everything they do online unless it's encrypted. There are a few different ways an attacker might set up this kind of rogue AP. Some attackers use small, portable AP devices that they can plug directly into an Ethernet port inside the target network. These are easy to conceal and use minimal power, making them pretty stealthy. Other attackers might use wireless APs that don't need a physical Ethernet connection, but instead connect to the network over Wi-Fi. In this case, the attacker just needs the network credentials. Another method is to use a USB-based rogue AP. Here, the attacker plugs a USB AP device directly into a computer that's already connected to the network, and the software on the USB automatically shares the network access through its own rogue AP. This option doesn't need an Ethernet port or the network credentials, which makes it even simpler to deploy. Some attackers even set up software-based rogue APs on a network computer's own Wi-Fi adapter, which means they don't need any extra hardware at all, just a program running on the device to create the rogue AP. Now, one popular toolkit attackers use for rogue APs is the Mana toolkit. This approach shows why it's so important for users and companies to be cautious when connecting to unknown networks and to use encryption to protect sensitive information. All right, let's dive into how an evil twin attack works and how attackers can set one up. An evil twin attack involves creating a rogue access point that looks identical to a legitimate AP by copying its SSID. Attackers set up this fake AP outside a network perimeter, like in a coffee shop, office, or any location with Wi-Fi. This setup tricks users into connecting to it, believing it's a safe, trusted network. Once connected, an attacker can capture the user's data, including sensitive login information, browsing activity, or any unencrypted traffic. Setting up an evil twin attack is surprisingly simple and can be done with basic equipment, like a laptop with internet access, either through 3G, 4G, or a wired connection, and a portable access point device. This approach illustrates just how challenging it can be to distinguish a real network from an evil twin, particularly when both APs broadcast the same name. So it's critical to verify network authenticity in public spaces and avoid logging into sensitive accounts or apps when unsure about the Wi-Fi source. Another serious wireless attack is the key reinstallation attack, commonly known as KRACK. This attack takes advantage of vulnerabilities in the WPA2 authentication protocol, specifically in the four-way handshake process. This handshake is what every secure Wi-Fi network uses to establish a connection between a device and an access point, and to generate a unique encryption key for protecting network traffic. KRACK exploits this handshake process by manipulating a part called the nonce. In simple terms, the nonce is a one-time use number that helps make each encryption key unique. During KRACK, an attacker tricks the device into reusing an already used nonce. By capturing and replaying cryptographic handshake messages, the attacker can effectively reset and reinstall the same encryption key multiple times. What's particularly concerning is that KRACK works on virtually all modern protected Wi-Fi networks, affecting both WPA and WPA2 protocols, whether they use the WPA TKIP, AES CCMP, or GCMP encryption standards. This vulnerability allows attackers to eavesdrop on and potentially intercept sensitive information transmitted over the network, such as passwords, credit card numbers, emails, and chat messages. KRACK doesn't just target one kind of device. Everything from Android and Linux to Windows, Apple, OpenBSD, and devices running MediaTek are susceptible to different variations of this attack. That means it affects nearly every device that can connect to a Wi-Fi network. This widespread vulnerability emphasizes the need for regular firmware updates and patches to keep devices secure against these kinds of attacks. All right, let's break down the concept of a jamming signal attack in simpler terms. A jamming signal attack is when an attacker disrupts a Wi-Fi network by sending out strong, overlapping signals that block legitimate users from connecting. Imagine trying to have a conversation in a room where someone is blasting loud music. You wouldn't be able to hear each other. This is similar to what happens in a jamming attack. Here's how it works. The attacker sets up a device that creates interference on the same frequency as the Wi-Fi network they're targeting. This interference acts like noise that jams the signal of the legitimate network, making it difficult or impossible for regular users to connect. Since Wi-Fi networks have built-in rules to avoid interference, like waiting for a quiet moment to transmit data, this constant noise forces devices to pause, which prevents normal communication. The result? Users experience dropped connections or can't log in at all, leading to a denial of service (DOS) for the network. These attacks are hard to detect because the jamming signal looks like regular interference. And since the attacker doesn't need to actually hack into the network, they don't need access to passwords or secure information, just a device that can broadcast on the same Wi-Fi frequency. In short, a jamming attack is like drowning out a Wi-Fi network with noise, causing regular users to be kicked off or unable to connect. All right, let's break down the alter attack in simpler terms. The alter attack is a way that hackers can take advantage of weaknesses in 4G LTE, the network that most of us use for mobile internet. Even though LTE was designed to be faster and more secure than older networks, it has a vulnerability that attackers can use to hijack data. Here's how it works. In an alter attack, the hacker sets up a fake cell tower to sit between the victim's phone and a real cell tower. This fake tower tricks the user's device into connecting to it. Once connected, the hacker can watch or even control the user's online activity. This setup allows them to see which websites the user visits, redirect them to harmful sites, or even steal sensitive information. The attack happens in two main steps. The first is information gathering phase. The attacker watches the user's online activity passively, collecting data without interacting directly. They use techniques like figuring out the target's device identity to narrow down their attack, tracking which websites the user visits and how often to get a clearer idea of the user's browsing habits. The second is attack phase. Once they have the information they need, the attacker launches the main attack. They intercept and manipulate data as it flows between the real cell tower and the user's device. Using techniques like DNS spoofing, the attacker can redirect the user to fake or malicious websites. This way, they could capture sensitive information like usernames, passwords, or even payment details. So, this attack is like setting up a fake middleman tower that tricks the user's device into sharing its internet activity. The hacker can then control and even change the sites the user visits, making it easy to steal sensitive information. All right, so let's go over Wi-Fi encryption cracking and how attackers go about breaking into secured Wi-Fi networks. When an attacker gains access to a Wi-Fi network, maybe by setting up a fake access point or using an evil twin, they often find another layer of protection that prevents them from seeing or capturing sensitive data right away. Wi-Fi networks generally use encryption protocols to secure data transmission, but there are still ways to crack these protections. For WPA and WPA2, even though they're more secure than older systems, they're not unbreakable. Attackers have a few specific strategies they use to get around these protections. One approach is targeting WPA pre-shared keys. In this setup, devices connect using a shared password, so while the attacker can't directly see the password in network packets, they can brute force it. Brute forcing involves testing many possible passwords from a dictionary file, usually full of common or weak passwords, until one matches. This works because a lot of people choose simple passwords that are easier to guess. Another method is called an offline attack. Here, the attacker only needs to be near the network briefly to capture the initial handshake that happens when a device first connects. The attacker doesn't get the actual password from this, but the handshake provides enough data to let them try cracking the password later using brute force or dictionary attacks. Deauthentication attacks are another approach. In this type of attack, the attacker targets an active user on the network and forces them to disconnect. The moment the user tries to reconnect, the attacker captures the authentication handshake, which contains a key called the pairwise master key. They can then use brute force or dictionary tools to attempt to crack this key and reveal the network password. Lastly, brute forcing WPA keys directly is an option, although it can be time-consuming and computationally heavy. The attacker runs software tools like Aircrack or AirPlay to guess the network's encryption key. With WPA's strong encryption, brute forcing can take hours, days, or even weeks, depending on the complexity of the password and the processing power available. So cracking WPA and WPA2 encryption isn't easy and demands special tools and techniques. But when weak passwords or reused keys are involved, networks become much more vulnerable. Strong, unique passwords are the best defense against these types of attacks. Let's talk about cracking WPS using Reaver, which is a tool designed specifically to attack Wi-Fi protected setup pins. WPS is a feature that allows devices to connect easily to a Wi-Fi network without entering a password using an 8-digit PIN. Reaver exploits vulnerabilities in this PIN to recover the network passphrase. The process starts by setting up your wireless interface in monitoring mode using a tool called Aircrack-NG. You can do this by running a command like Aircrack-NG start WLAN 0 to enable the interface for monitoring. Once the interface is ready, the next step is to scan for WPS-enabled devices. You can use the wash utility for this by running the command wash-i interface. This command will show you the WPS-enabled devices around. If wash doesn't detect anything, you can use Aircrack-NG to scan for devices instead, which will display all available access points, including those with WPS enabled. Once you've identified the target device's MAC address, you're ready to start cracking the WPS pin with Reaver. You can do this by running the command reaver-i LAN-mon-b BSSID-VV, where LAN-mon is your monitor mode interface and BSSID is the target device's MAC address. Reaver will then attempt to guess the pin by testing all possible combinations, and once it finds the correct one, it can use that pin to recover the Wi-Fi passphrase. This method is effective because of how WPS works, and while it can take some time, Reaver makes it possible to recover the Wi-Fi password without needing to know much about the network ahead of time. Alright, let's go over how WPA/WPA2 encryption can be cracked using the Aircrack-NG suite of tools. Here's the basic process. First, the attacker uses Aircrack-NG start wireless interface, which enables monitor mode. If there are errors, they might run Aircrack-NG check kill to stop any interfering processes. Using Aircrack-NG, then wireless interface, the attacker scans for available access points and connected devices, showing a list of targets. After identifying the network, they open another terminal and run this command. This command captures packets specifically from the targeted network. To capture the handshake faster, they use Aircrack-NG to send deauthentication packets. By this command, this temporarily disconnects a device, prompting it to reconnect and send a new handshake. They keep monitoring with Aircrack-NG until a WPA handshake is captured. The data is saved in a .cap file for analysis. Finally, they run this command. Aircrack-NG will compare the captured handshake data against passwords in password duck until it finds a match. If it finds the right password, it shows key found. This method can be quick or very slow, depending on the complexity of the password. Alright, let's talk about using Fern Wi-Fi Cracker to brute force WPA passwords. Fern Wi-Fi Cracker is a tool that helps you test the security of wireless networks. It's a Python-based tool that can crack WPA and WPS keys and also perform other network-based attacks. It's a pretty straightforward process once you get the hang of it. Now let's talk about cracking the most secure WPA3 encryption. WPA3 is designed to be much stronger than WPA2, with its Dragonfly handshake, also known as SAE, providing a more secure way of authenticating passwords. Despite its improvements, WPA3 is still vulnerable to attacks. One such vulnerability is called Dragon Blood, which allows attackers to exploit weaknesses in the system, like recovering keys or even downgrading the security to something weaker, like WPA2. A common attack is the downgrade attack, If a client and the access point both support WPA2 and WPA3, an attacker can trick the client into using the weaker WPA2 encryption. This is done by setting up a rogue access point that only supports WPA2, making the client connect to it instead of WPA3. Once connected, the attacker can then attempt to crack the WPA2 encryption. Another attack comes from the Dragonfly handshake, where the attacker pretends to be a legitimate access point. When a user tries to connect with WPA3, the attacker tells the client that WPA3 isn't supported and suggests switching to WPA2. This weakens the connection, allowing the attacker to exploit the WPA2 encryption. There's also something called side-channel attacks, which happen during the key exchange process. One example is the timing-based attack, where an attacker measures how long the encryption process takes, using this timing information to narrow down potential passwords. Another is the cache-based attack, where malicious code is injected into a user's browser to monitor memory access patterns and extract sensitive data like passwords. To crack WPA3 encryption, attackers typically use tools like Aircrack-NG and Hashcat. The process involves a few steps. First, they put their Wi-Fi adapter into monitor mode to capture traffic. Then, they use a tool like Aerodump-NG to capture the handshake, the exchange that happens when a device connects to the network. To get this handshake, the attacker forces a connected device to disconnect and reconnect, capturing the handshake in the process. Once they have the handshake, it needs to be converted into a format that can be cracked. That's done using a tool like HCX Tools. After conversion, the handshake is fed into Hashcat, which uses a word list of potential passwords to try and find the correct one. Though WPA3 offers better security, these techniques show that attackers can still find ways to exploit weaknesses in the system, especially if the implementation isn't perfect. Let's talk about how you can defend your Wi-Fi network against cracking attacks and keep it secure. The first line of defense is using strong passwords. Make sure your Wi-Fi password is long, complex, and hard to guess, ideally between 12 and 16 characters, mixing uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and special characters. For client settings, always use WPA2 with AES encryption. Ensure the settings are properly configured, like validating the server and specifying the server address to prevent automatic server switching. Also, regenerate your keys every time a new connection is made. Adding extra controls can also help. Using VPN technologies like remote access or extranet VPNs is a good idea to keep communication secure. For even more control, you can implement protocols like IPsec or SSL-TLS and a network access control system for managing user connections. One key security tip is to disable Temporal Key Integrity Protocol in your router settings. Stick to AES encryption for the strongest security. Another helpful tip is to use MAC address filtering, which allows only certain devices to connect to your network based on their MAC addresses. If your router supports WPA3, upgrade to it, as it offers stronger protection against attacks, including brute force attempts. WPA3 also has mechanisms to protect connected devices better than WPA2, so it's worth the upgrade. Along with WPA3, it's a good idea to turn off remote management features on your router to prevent external attackers from accessing your settings. WPS, or Wi-Fi Protected Setup, is another feature you should disable. It has known vulnerabilities that can be exploited to break into your network. Also, remember to regularly update your router's firmware. Manufacturers release updates that fix security holes, so make sure to apply those patches when available. Reducing the signal range of your Wi-Fi network can make a big difference. By adjusting your router's transmission power, you can limit the Wi-Fi signal to only the area you need, reducing the chance of unauthorized access from outside your building. Monitoring your network is another key defense strategy. Regularly check for any unusual activity or unauthorized devices using network monitoring tools. This helps you spot potential attacks early. When setting up your router, make sure to change the default SSID and router password. Disable SSID broadcasts so the network name isn't easily visible to outsiders. You can also enable firewall protection and disable any unused ports to minimize vulnerabilities. Lastly, adding measures like rogue AP detection or wireless intrusion prevention systems can help spot and block malicious attempts to access your network. By following these best practices, you can significantly strengthen your network's defenses and reduce the risk of a successful attack. And that's it for today. We've gone through how wireless networks work, the different types of encryptions, and the methods hackers use to break into Wi-Fi. We also talked about some tools hackers use and how you can protect your network from attacks. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future videos. If you have any questions or thoughts, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.